Is there anything about your taste that you are in love with, but the internet just doesn't get?
Mm, yes. I think so. I think especially in the home decor space, you'll often hear the term thrown around like influencer taste. Like there are certain products or brands that I think disproportionately show up in people who make content's homes. I think that gets thrown around in recently in a more negative context because I think it's perceived in a way that it's like this is not really your style. This is just like brands that are sort of like pushing an agenda, and you're kind of just like a platform for brands to use you. I think I've had a funny relationship with that because I think in a this is gonna sound like a little bit egotistical, but I think like in a certain way, like I almost feel as though like I'm sort of like responsible for what people quote unquote see as like the influencer aesthetic. Like I often get comments being like, "Oh, you have the same aesthetic as this person," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's because that person started making content like a year after I started making content."
I did it first, god damn it.
Yeah, I hate saying that because at the end of the day, it's like I don't claim credit for I don't want to claim credit for a lot of things, and it's like I guess we can talk more about this, but I have a lot of even just like imposter syndrome when even when it comes to this interior design and home decor stuff because I have like no design background. I didn't study for it. I didn't go to school for it or anything. It was literally just like a hobby that I picked up the summer after I graduated college, and I just started posting videos about it. So it's been like a very dynamic learning process, which I think like if you follow my journey from the beginning, you would understand that. But obviously, like the way the internet works, it's like people will pop in like on whatever part of your journey and often take things out of context. And so even though I feel like the style that I've created with like, like I have a lot of like playful stuff like my Legos. Um, I gravitate towards like, like more calmer tones, which I think people see as like a very like safe way to play it. But I think like in my mind, it's been a very natural progression for my design style that I feel like is unique to me. But I think when perceived from the outside, especially if you didn't follow that journey, can often come off as like, oh, this is like a quote unquote influencer aesthetic or whatever.
Yeah. I want you to experiment with this. If you're the ground zero for style and taste on social media, if you just throw in some like really weird aesthetic all of a sudden, I'm trying to think like you start painting walls black and then you just start imagine then in a couple weeks you just start seeing everybody's walls painted black. That's how you know that Eric Wang is the tip of the spear for design influence on social media.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I will say I feel like there are certain things that I pick up or I do that I see a few like later and I'm like, oh, like maybe that was inspired by me. But again, like I really try to separate myself from I guess what people perceive as like my success because I think like I like to take everything with grace. I like to stay humble and at the end of the day, like I really attribute like at least 50% of my growth to honestly just like luck and just being at the right place at the right time. And so yeah, I never want to take too much credit for it, but at the same time, it's like it's a learning process of understanding your impact on this space, right?
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot to the appetite that the market had for wanting to see a guy who was not trying to be the expert. There was a lot of you and I probably both grew up with home and garden television. There was the Chip and Joannes on TV who
Mm-hmm.
were credentialed, but certainly had a lot of experience and a lot of age to
Yeah.
say, hey, what I have to say has a lot of authority behind it. But
Hmm.
then there's this young, handsome kid who seems to somewhat have his life together, but he's figuring things out. I'm here for the journey. That's what I enjoy watching your content for. I have, it's odd at what you say. I think it's so true that people arrive at a different part of your journey and they're missing the context of, yo, I never said I was an expert. Do you find that a lot of people are thinking that you're some master degree design man who has credentials online?
I think it's more, see, I think people online often conflate like number of followers with quote unquote expertise, right? And I think the two things are very separate. Like it's like you said, right? Like for me, this has never been like I'm gonna teach you how to design your space perfectly. It's more so like I picked up design as a hobby. It's become my passion, and I'm experimenting with these different things. You can take inspiration from them if you want to. You don't have to follow them. And so, obviously, I come across this term a lot. The term what was it? Bean soup theory, where it's like people who watch things want to make it all about like their perspective or themselves. It's like if you watch a video or a lady making a recipe of bean soup, and then you'll comment like, "What if I don't like using beans?" And it's like just don't watch the video then, right?
It's
so
a
I
chili, god damn it. It has
yeah,
beans in it.
pretty much. So yeah, I guess if that's a kind of long-winded way of answering your question.
Yeah, the internet's weird like that, man. And they see people who seem to have their stuff figured out, and it's sucky that there's going to be a small percentage of people who want to see you fail if they see you at the top of the ladder. And does that at all interfere as you've climbed the ranks, as you've developed some feelings of notoriety, your willingness to experiment, as you have self-admittedly said, you're here to just learn and to evolve over time? Have you seen that stunt your growth at all?
I try not to let it, I think like it's a similar question just to asking like, do you let like, does any creator let the negative comments get to them, right? Or like when people criticize you, like how do you kind of take that? I think for me, it's like because I've really tried to take things one step at a time and not get ahead of myself. And again, like I don't call myself an expert. I think it hasn't really impacted my entire like design or creative process a lot. It's like at the end of the day, I like the things that I like and I don't really let other people's opinions dictate that. Obviously, like sometimes the things that I like line up very well with the stuff that's very popular, right? So I think in a lot of cases you can perceive it as like, oh, he's just following trends. But at the end of the day, I think in some ways trends are trends for a reason, right? There's a lot of things that I could point to, like in home decor space, the overly beige aesthetic, right? Like one of the comments that I get the most is like, oh, like you should experiment with your style. Like all of your furniture is like dull tones. Like you use like little pops of color, but like I feel like you're just not being like very experimental, which is like I think is definitely like a very valid criticism, right? But at the same time, it's like this is my space, and I'm gonna design my space the way that I want to, and I know what makes me feel good when I'm in a space, and these are the things that make me feel good, and so I try not to overthink it too much because I think once you get down the rabbit hole of like trying to please a certain group or trying to like fit into one certain aesthetic, it quickly becomes like a almost like a thing of like you start losing the things that you're actually passionate about and the things that you actually want to push, and it more so becomes like maybe catering towards like the mass internet's appeal or whatever. I've really tried not to let that impact me too much. There are obviously days in which like I'll get comments that like kind of bother me a little bit, but at the same time, it's like that's part of our job, right? I think like being a content creator, it's like people often see like the good sides of it, and you'll often I think hear a lot of content creators complain about like certain things, but like like at the end of the day, this is a job that I've never dreamed I would even have in the first place. There's so many benefits to it, and so like there's no job that exists in the world that has no setbacks, right? So it's like you have to be open to criticism, you have to be open to taking these things with grace, because it's like if there was no hate comments and there weren't negative impacts of that, like this would literally be like a perfect job, right? You got to work whenever you want to, you got to make the things you want to make. I just like I think I'm at a point in my life where like I understand that like everything has drawbacks and it's just part of it.
Yeah. Was there ever a point in your content creation journey where you were doing it specifically for the feedback? And is that at all an element to it still now, where there's some homies in the comment section who have like really salient responses and good advice? Are you seeing
Yeah,
that at all?
definitely, absolutely. I think like so I would say it varies by platform, and I think YouTube. So I post long form YouTube videos sometimes as well. Those obviously like they got a lot more less traction in terms of like number of views on the internet, but I think those are the comments that I listen to the most because there's a people that are actually willing to sit down and are like to a large degree understand my design journey a little bit better than people who are just watching like a 10-second video. And so I think especially with YouTube comments, I always try to read all of my comments, and I think I've gotten a lot of amazing feedback in the past about like integrating certain design ideas or checking out certain things. So I always try to keep myself really open to it just because I think part of our jobs as content creators is understanding that like we have our platforms because of the people who watch our videos, right? And even though some of those comments are going to be kind of like trolls or people hating on you for no reason, a lot of those comments are also going to be super valid. And especially because I come from a background that I'm not a designer, I don't have this educational background, I honestly try to like receive every input as a learning opportunity, right? It's like if I can discover something new, if I can like play around with colors in a different way that I hadn't thought about before, I'm all ears for that.
Mm-hmm. I'm imagining the critical response of somebody saying you're not an expert and you just agreeing with them.
Yeah, I'm not. You're right.
It's the best response, and so long as you come with a face of honesty, then there's no hiding from the truth. That
Yes.
hey guys, I'm here just documenting my life.
Yes, definitely.
You are renting, right, in San Fran?
I am, yes. I'm renting in the Bay Area. Not quite in San Francisco. I'm like 30-ish minutes outside of the city. So obviously, like my place in the city would be like absurdly expensive. Me and my girlfriend both decided to make she works fully remote. Obviously, as a content creator, I work fully remote. So yeah, we decided to rent a little spot. I would call it in the suburbs. We're a little bit removed from everything, but I think that's really something that I enjoy a lot.
Us Cali boys, the likelihood of us buying,
Yeah,
it's
where are you based out of actually? You're in LA?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, which like do you mind asking me which part of LA? There's like
I'm in East LA, we call it. So Glendale, specifically an area called Adams Hill.
got
Nice
it.
and hilly.
Okay.
Got a beautiful 1970s mid-century modern house that we're
Yeah, I've seen
renting.
some glimpses of your place as well. Looks awesome.
We searched for so long, and we were me and my lady been together for 6 years, and it took 5 years to find a place together. We both liked our apartments, but we couldn't cohabitate because we're both really snobbish with our architectural and interior design tastes, and
Uh-huh.
it's hard financially. What makes sense the most is still renting, but then still having a really high bar to meet. How long did you guys try research to find the spot that you're in?
So I don't know if you maybe I want to say you probably started following my content after I moved into this spot. When I lived in my previous loft apartment, I basically like when I knew my lease was going to expire in June, and I just started browsing Zillow basically from the start of the year, so like January all the way up until May, just like looking for months because I knew I wanted at that point I already had quit my job, my full time job, and I knew I wanted to do content full time. And so I basically made it like a big priority to just like literally wake up in the morning and check Zillow every single day for like 6 months. And then we actually didn't end up finding this place literally, I think 2 weeks before my lease in my last apartment ended. So it was actually a really rushed process. Like I looked for months, didn't find anything, like toured obviously a few places. This actually place wasn't even on our, like I actually didn't even consider moving out of San Francisco until I found this place. I ideally obviously wanted to find somewhere a little bit closer to the city just because most of my friends live in the city. And so it took a long time. And I think honestly, we stumbled upon this place low key by chance. And when I actually walked into this place, I immediately felt maybe you felt the same way when you were touring your house, but like every other space I stepped into, it's like, oh, I like this, I like this. But there in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, there's this thing that I don't love. But when I walked into this place, like I think it evoked some sort of like emotional response for me, where it's like even though it wasn't an area that I loved a lot, or even though it was like you know a different style of house that I had even anticipated on finding, because I actually didn't even like really stumble upon this idea of like mid-century modern houses until I actually toured this place. Like this was really the catalyst for me to get into that style specifically. So short answer, like I did look a lot, but at the same time, a lot of it felt like chance as well because we just stumbled upon this place, and when I walked in here, it just felt like the right one.
Yeah, I think a lot of our experiences line up the same. It felt like I had stumbled into it, but I had this emotional response that this is right. It's simply the only
Hmm.
option that I have. And I was just like a lightning bolt to my computer to send in the application when we had toured this place for 5 minutes because it was
Hmm.
super competitive. And
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
applied to some places that seemed kind of it, but we were getting really desperate after 6 months plus of researching too. And we've had our applications just that the feedback was it's fine, but somebody got ahead of you. So we wanted to make sure we were first in line. It was really nice. That said, though, it's so funny that you've stumbled into this home, this architectural design, because it so influences your observed taste up to
Hmm.
this point.
Yes.
Who could you have imagined yourself in a different spot? And like if you found yourself in some more like another loft, for
Hmm.
instance,
Yeah.
or like,
Back now that I've lived here a long time, I can't imagine living anywhere else for the last 2 years. But when I first find this place, like I was mentioned, like I wasn't looking for mid-century style necessarily. So I certainly, and by that time I had also already been doing like this kind of home decor content full time. So I certainly could have seen myself living somewhere else, and I think I probably also would have been fine. But at the same time, it's like I'm a big believer in the idea that like when an opportunity presents itself, you kind of just have to jump on it, regardless of whether or not you think it aligns with what you thought you wanted. And so like this felt like this felt like that opportunity. And so like even though I really didn't know anything about this particular style, and even though like it's pretty significantly different from what you consider like my loft apartment, which is like much more concrete, modern, like typical like city vibes. I just decided to roll with it, and I think that's my mindset for not just like when I'm looking for houses, but just like my life in general. I really just try to open myself to opportunities, and when those opportunities present themselves, like making sure, like you said, to like really jump on them, right? Like make sure you give it your all and just go with it.
Do you think people can rush their taste?
No, I don't. I think I think when you rush your taste, then you really fall into the idea of like, oh, this is like a very specific, you start copying a certain aesthetic or you start buying specific pieces because you saw other people have them. I think like for me, I've developed my taste over, I guess, the last like 3 or 4 years, and it's something that's evolved and it continues to evolve on like a monthly, a yearly basis. So my advice to people when it comes to interior design and stuff is always to like, like you're gonna move into a space, you need somewhere to sleep, right? So like, if you want to like buy a bed off Facebook Marketplace, but like when it comes to like building what I call, I guess, like your forever home, or even if you're renting, in my case, like developing a style and really picking up pieces that you think you're gonna keep for beyond just this lease. I really believe in the idea of like taking it extremely slow. Like I've lived here for what, a year and 7 months now, and there are still things that I like look around. I'm like, oh, I think I might switch this or I might switch that, because I think like taste is not really, especially if you want like taste that's authentic to yourself. It's really hard to rush that because especially if you don't have like an educational background in design or whatever, it takes a long time for you to realize what you like. And especially I think when it comes to home and decor and interior design, one of my biggest tips is always to like move in somewhere and understand like how your habits align with the space, right? Like if you're eating breakfast in a certain way, then like, oh, maybe you should invest in like counter stools instead of like a traditional dining setup, right? Like I definitely believe in the idea of living somewhere and understanding actually how you interact with the space on a daily basis before making any big decisions and purchasing certain things, because if you want to make a space that's personal to you, you have to understand like what actually you do on a daily basis, right?
What does your taste say about your personality?
Hmm. I think it says, I want to say it's someone who has a level of sophistication when it comes to certain design styles and certain like intentionality, but at the same time, I also really like to try to have a strong degree of playfulness. And so you'll see that with like the little pops of color I have with like all the Legos and stuff. Like my girlfriend loves Miffy, so we have a bunch of Miffy stuff. Like I went to Japan, I discovered Smiski, and I got us a Smiski, so I have a bunch of Smiskis around the place. Like, I think like what defines my style is it's very much like at its core a lot of the big pieces, like my Eames lounge chair that's like extremely mid-century modern, right? It's very classic modern, mid-century modern, or my Togo sofa, right? That's another like classic piece. But I think it's like all the little details that I would say like really define my style, and I think make it. And I think honestly, to a certain degree, you could even argue that it's like reflective of me as a Gen Z person, right? Like I'm 25, and so I feel like uh, even though I guess my accessibility to a lot of these design brands is extremely high, I think it would just feel like super weird and inauthentic to me if I like, for example, like only had like certain decor pieces from certain like high-end brands. It's like I don't want to hide the fact that like I've played with Legos my entire life, right? So I'm gonna like include all the Legos I want to in my space. And I think that's like really what makes my space my space. And I love it when I walk into other people's homes and like you can immediately tell like the different hobbies that they have, whether that's like the music they listen to or like yeah, I guess like things like Legos, other like memorabilia from travel and stuff like that. I think that's you can really tell when a space is like lived in and you understand like who that person is from what you're being in there.
Yeah, you seem to wrap so much of your identity in your home. Is it
Mm-hmm.
challenging for you to identify with who Eric is when you're outside your home, whether you're traveling or if you're socializing with
Mm.
family, for instance?
I think no, because I think my home is just an extension of what I see as like who I am. Like my home doesn't necessarily define me, but rather like I am who I am. And so I want to include things about my personality in my home. Like when I travel, like, um, like part of actually one of the reasons why I like traveling is to experience other types of design that are not something that I have at home. So for example, like me and my girlfriend went to Maui like in December or I forgot earlier this year, and we stayed in like I think a 1980s or no 1920s like log cabin style home, which like obviously has like some similarities. Like there were also like the wood vaulted ceilings, but like it also tons of design elements that are completely unlike anything that I've ever seen or that I've personally integrated into my own home. And so also like one of the reasons why I do love traveling is to experience different types of design and to experience other types of design that I haven't integrated to my own space. And so, taking inspiration from that, or at least understanding, like why other people like this type of design, I think is something that I really enjoy when I travel.
Hmm. What's your girlfriend's name?
Naya, N-Y-A.
Is there anything that Naya has in the apartment that betrays your sense of taste, but you just leave it in because you're a nice boyfriend?
Honestly, this is gonna sound like a nice answer, but the genuine answer is no. I think like we, in a lot of ways, have a ton of overlap in our taste, number one. And then number two, it's also like I curate this space, but behind the scenes, like I'm constantly asking her like what her opinions are in this color and things like that. So like you could argue that to a large degree, like this space was also designed by her because it's a very collaborative process, right? Like as my girlfriend, like I want her to feel comfortable in the space and I want her style to be integrated as well. And so like on the internet, obviously it seems like Eric Wang's apartment, but it really is like Eric and Naya's apartment or Eric and Naya's home. And so I don't really ever feel like she has anything that I feel like is like ruining the aesthetic of our place at all.
Hmm. It's not necessarily a traditional relationship, the man in the household deciding the decor.
Yes.
It doesn't surprise me that Naya is involved considerably. I think women inherently have better taste than men. Were you exposed to many men in your childhood, or do you know many men now that are into aesthetic?
So I do now. I do now, and I honestly I want to say that a big part of it has not necessarily just been me, but just the overall movement of males in decor spaces. I think you see a lot of. I would honestly argue that there are probably just as many guy home decor influencers as there are female home decor influencers now, which I think is awesome because I think like you mentioned before, like when I was growing up watching like HGTV and like all these things, it's like it was pretty much it was a lot of women designers, right? And my I guess initial interest in taking care of my space, I won't even call it like my design interest, but just like my interest in like keeping my space clean and like at least caring about the space that I am in. I think really came from my mom. Like my mom would always take me shopping with her at like on the weekends at like TJ Maxx or Crate and Barrel, Marshalls and stuff like that. And so like even though back then I didn't really care at all about this home decor stuff, I think just her general care for taking care of her space and wanting to make her home somewhere where she and her family feels comfortable is something that rubbed off on me a lot. And I'd say like that is probably like my first initial influence and what really got me into caring about not even just home decor, but just like my space and taking care of myself in general.
Do you have any guy friends, homies, who are just like, I'm not into that home decor. It's too girly. What do you say to that dude?
So I think I actually don't have many friends that say that, which I feel lucky for. I try to surround myself with people that I think not necessarily share the same viewpoint as me, but at least value similar things, or if they don't value it, can at least see the value in that. So I think I personally don't have friends that I would say like kind of brush the home decor aside. But yeah, I guess like as a whole in general, dudes don't care as much about their space as women do. Um, I think that's a huge shame because I think like I know how much joy I get out of designing my space and living in my space. And so I like part of my, I guess like mission when I started making content was really to share that joy with the rest of the world and especially like my male audience. Like I initially thought that when I started my social media that like my audience, given that it was decor type content, would be like 80% female, 20% male. But actually like my demographics, I think in both my viewers and my followers are pretty much exactly split 50-50. Which I'm really happy about. And I think it's really awesome to see guys, especially like when they watch my YouTube videos, they'll comment things like, oh, like you really inspired me to like, take care of my space more when I didn't care about it and like live this like slower pace of life that I think like a lot of guys, and I'm sure you feel this also, like there's a lot of the people I went to college with like really buy into this whole idea of oh like make money, drive fast cars, like women, stuff like, you know what I mean? Like the very stereotypical like dude mindset of like what they think success looks like. And I think for me, it's like I very quickly realized that like when I graduated college, like I didn't like going out to parties, I didn't like drinking, like what I enjoyed doing was like staying home and like having a few friends come over, like we watch a movie, we play Xbox, like we just enjoy the space that I've curated. And I think like I really take a lot of pride in, I think, being able to spread that message and kind of like not just like the home decor aspect, but just like enjoying like the simple things or the small things that I think a lot of people, especially guys nowadays, overlook because, you know, whether that's because of like pop culture and media, whatever, like pushing certain narratives of what like dudes should be interested in.
I could see the slippery slope to this being men shifting so much on the pendulum to being hyper interested in design and aesthetic for potentially the wrong reason, though. What would you say to the guy who is doing it out of vanity, let's say, rather than the love for?
Yeah. Do you mean sort of like in a performative way?
I think so, especially with social media, and I I feel like I see these guys who are following the trends, but they're stunting their Noguchi lamps in the same way that Dan Bilzerian was stunting his Rolexes and yachts back in the day.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think I would argue that from my perspective, like there will always be people who love it for the attention that they get and not because they actually have a genuine passion in it. But I think like it's hard to say that that's necessarily a purely negative thing too, because in my opinion, like especially when guys are just new to the home decor space, it's like any input or any influence towards that direction, I think is still a relatively positive thing. I can certainly say that there are certain things that I've bought or you know integrate into my space that initially I felt like was a bit performative, where I thought like, oh, if I buy this, then like it'll do better for a video. But then I think like the longer that you're in it, and if you actually stay in it for a long enough time, that performativeness eventually translates to some degree into a level of genuine passion, right? Like I don't believe that anyone can be performative for a certain like an extended period of time because ultimately like that's especially in the social media world, it becomes very clear, I think, when someone's being kind of like fake or it's not being true to themselves. And so like I think it's just like a part of the process. Like there will always be some people who are doing performatively, but I think in the end, it's just overall still a better outcome than like dudes not caring about their space at all, right?
Yeah. Is there a test that guys can give themselves though to know that they're on the right path or they're not competing with something that is potentially them performing a level of taste that isn't genuine to them?
Hmm. Again, I think it's a time thing. I think it's like you can buy your first Noguchi lamp, right? And it's like, but if you only buy that one Noguchi lamp and that's the only thing you're buying, and then you never really care about anything else home decor, it's like kind of clear. It's like, okay, maybe you just got that piece for like the status symbol of that piece, right? I think like if you're somebody who continues to work on their design for a long enough period of time, you'll understand yourself and whether or not you're passionate about it and whether it's just something that you're kind of doing for the sake of doing it. I think it becomes pretty clear. And it takes a level of certain, I guess, a level of honesty with yourself and kind of just living in that space and understanding, like, is this actually meaningful to you? Or are you just doing this because you think that this is what people want you to do?
Hmm. Are there any luxury items that you've purchased or been given that you just categorically think are way a waste of money?
Hmm.
Looks around.
I have a lot of expensive stuff, so I probably could say yes to that for a lot of things. So, okay, I guess I'll maybe back up and just talk about my general philosophy on expensive furniture versus like not expensive furniture. I think it's comparable in a similar way to people who collect art, right? Like what really makes a piece of art worth $10,000 versus something that's worth only $100? I think you know like do materials play a certain aspect in of it? Of course. Like obviously when you're buying high-end designer items, you can guarantee that like, you know, whether it's made of solid wood and not like MDF, like there are certain things that like you can objectively say like make something more worth it. But at the end of the day, I think like can anyone really say that like I'll take like the Eames lounge chair for example. Can anyone really say that like a lounge chair and ottoman is worth $7,000? Like I think it's extremely hard to justify that as if you're not like completely delusional. Like obviously people who are like born into a lot of wealth, like maybe that's the norm for them. So for them, they see that as like the standard and they see like IKEA as like literally a piece of shit, right? But I think like as a whole, it's extremely hard to justify the prices that I think high-end furniture brands put on their stuff. And I think you'll also realize that like economically, a huge part of these brands is actually selling to like interior designers who like get trade discounts and stuff like that. Like most people who actually purchase these things aren't even actually paying like the retail price for them because, you know, these businesses will knock off discounts for like design firms or stuff like that. And so like I like to say that a piece is worth however much you like it, and if you like it enough, then it's worth it for you. I think like one aspect that is inarguable is that from an investment standpoint, right? Like buying something like an Eames lounge chair, like that's an iconic piece for a reason. I know that that value will hold throughout the years. So like even from like an economic standpoint, like is it absurd to spend $7,000 on a chair initially? Yes, but like when I passed it on to like my grandkids and the chair lasts until then, and now the chair is like still worth the same amount of money, like I think you can objectively say it's worth it compared to something like maybe like an IKEA chair that like, like there's so much landfill caused by like people throwing away furniture that they buy for like college or buy for their first apartment and then just get rid of it afterwards. And so like for me, I think like expensive furniture can often be worth it because especially if it's something that you see yourself carrying for a long time. And so like all of the expensive stuff that I purchased, even my last apartment, like I still have it. I know I'm going to have it for many years to come. And so like I think there's a certain level of like attachment or pride that can come with buying more expensive stuff because you attach a little bit more value to it and you know that's going to hold its value a little bit better.
I like that. I think it does potentially conflict sometimes with the spirit of experimentation and trying something on before you, rather we should say test drive something before you buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is certainly a financial incentive, but there's a psychological component to putting $7,000 into a chair or $500 into a lamp and then feeling obligated to then rock that on your shelf or over in your reading nook for
Yep.
an extended period of time based on the sunk cost of the money that you shilled out on.
Yes.
What do you
Yes.
think? Let's picture our kind of typical fresh out of college bro. He is out of the dorm now. Where does he start? And he's hearing a lot of this advice. He just stumbled on Eric Wang's Instagram page too. I can put myself in his shoes and I'm overwhelmed AF. I don't know where to start. He's got some really nice pieces too. Do I buy? Do I have to spend all this money? Walk me
Definitely
through it.
not.
Hold my hand, Papa Eric.
I get this question a lot because like, obviously I have, a lot of it is honestly also just a byproduct of me actually working directly with these brands, right? I'm not going to sit here and lie. Like I've certainly like this Togo sofa, for example. Like I bought this with my own money. It was the most expensive thing I ever purchased at the time. I think I paid $4,000 for it, which for like a love seat like this, like felt absurd at the time. But for me, felt like it was worth it because I wanted this. I've been following this like Togo style of sofa for like years. Like like I was looking for the right deal on it, and like I finally stumbled upon it, and so I pulled the trigger. But I would say in general, like my number one thing I always tell people when they first started getting into the home decor space is like secondhand and Facebook Marketplace. Like that is it's easily the best way to not only discover things that maybe you hadn't thought of before, but also to get it at a very accessible price point. And at the end of the day, unless it's something like, I probably wouldn't buy like a mattress secondhand just because like you don't know what they did with the mattress beforehand. But like most furniture is just as good, if not even I think better, a lot of it's secondhand because it has a lot more character, it has more story behind it. And it often comes, like not only at an accessible price point, I've even gotten some stuff on Facebook Marketplace before where it's like literally free. It's like the guy just wants to get rid of it. And it's like, hey, like if you come pick this up, like I'll literally just give it to you. So I think like Facebook Marketplace, I guess like Craigslist, anything like that is like easily the best starting point. And it's like, I'd say if you think that you like a certain piece, I obviously always recommend people to not buy it immediately because like think about like on a deeper level why you actually like that piece. Like for example, my Eames lounge chair, right? It's like has a white oak shell. It has like these the white boucle upholstery. Like then maybe the reason why you like that is because this combination of like white boucle and wood, right? There's tons of other chairs out there that are like that. And you can probably find one secondhand that is extremely similar. Before I had this lounge chair, I had something that was also extremely similar. And so like, that is another way I think to tell whether or not someone really likes something is like, if you have an understanding and you're able to understand yourself why you actually like that, that probably indicates like a genuine level of passion or connection to the certain style versus like if I ask you why you want to buy this Eames lounge chair and your only answer is like, oh, I just like Eames lounge chairs. It's like probably not something that you should just purchase for that reason. It's like purchase it because you have a passion for it, the designer, because you appreciate the history behind it, or because like, like you understand that this is the aesthetic you like and this is the aesthetic you like and this is like the final form of that, like something I'm going to keep for generations at a time. But yeah, I absolutely do not recommend anybody to buy anything that's extremely expensive off the start. There's such a high chance that you're not going to like it later on and you're going to regret spending that much money on it. that it's just like not worth
Back to renting, and I see this kind of relating to social media a little bit too. Being able to experiment and the degree to which your taste, your style, the choices that you make are really influenced on a how liberal versus conservative the moves that you take are, especially as a renter. Could you see yourself in a different position if you were buying the sorts of modifications you would have made to your home versus being a renter? And how has that influenced the style that you have? And for me too, I'm kind of in the same boat. I wonder where I'd be if I could knock down some walls here.
it. Yeah. Um, I would say it does vary a lot, and I think there's a reason why there's very I see it as like pretty separate parts of the home social media space. It's like the one side of people who like own homes and you're doing more like renovation DIY type stuff, and the people who are like renting means you're limited in a lot of things that you can do. I think part of the reason why I like making this content and like renting is because I like to show people that even when you are renting, there's still so much that you can do with your space. But I think there is like a pretty stark difference, and it's a difference that I'm really curious in experiencing myself once me and my girlfriend are kind of like at the point where we're able to buy a place ourselves. Because I genuinely think that when I reach that point, like the type of content that I make will maybe be like very different because there's like a ton that goes into when you actually own a place, like being able to like actually like renovate the kitchen, the bathroom, like do things that like actually fit. Like there's some things that in this house that like drive me nuts that my landlord did. Like
Tell me, what are you dreaming about that you could do differently if you own this sucker?
the most annoying thing is not necessarily stylistically. I like absolutely love what my landlord did with this place, and I think like I honestly owe a lot of what my current taste is to him. Like he like introduced me obviously to this mid-century modern style. Like one of the things I love about my kitchen is that like he preserved some of like the original 1970s tiles, and like some people might say it looks really shitty, but I really like the contrast between like this relatively newly modern renovated home that has like he spent the extra money to like for the windows, for example. Like he got the nice like e-glass where it's like like really thick glass, and it's like um keeps the heat in better or whatever. But at the same time, it's like you have this like objectively like in some ways kind of shitty kitchen that I really love. But from a functionality standpoint, there are certain things that like drive me nuts about this house. Like our kitchen counters, for example, are not like level at all. So like they're a little bit tilted this way. And so when he mounted the sink, like all the water when I'm using my kitchen sink goes to the front of the sink and doesn't actually go down the drain. And that gets super annoying because like when you're cleaning dishes and stuff, like you kind of expect the stuff that you wash off to go down the drain instead of like pooling up at the front of the sink. And so like from like a functionality standpoint, there are certain things that he's done that like annoys me on a daily basis. But like from an aesthetic standpoint, like I honestly like I love my landlord, and I think that he's influenced me a lot as well.
Yeah, outside of the small little quirks that you would love to modify if you're a homeowner, I kind of love renting because we're dealing with some oven issues right now. We just call up our landlord and they're just
Yeah.
handling all the interfacing, and then the oven repair guy just shows up and we're like, it wasn't us, it was the previous renters, and kind of just absolve ourselves of the sins of previous people.
Yeah. There's obviously a whole slew of things that come with like real home ownership that I probably even haven't thought of at all. But I think like in terms of my own home decor journey, I hopefully see that as the next step because I would like to be more involved in like the actual renovation process of now that I've sort of like developed my own style. There are certain things like I have an idea of like a dream bathroom that I would have, for example, or like I really like the idea of being able to choose the tiles that I put on my kitchen backsplash. Like those are obviously things I can't really do as a renter, but I would dream of doing. But yeah, at the same time, like what you said, there's so many benefits to renting in the sense that like there's a certain detachment from the space itself. It's like, oh, I kind of hate this, but like at the same time, like I can just push it off on my landlord, like, hey, can you fix this? Instead of having to take the responsibility and stress by yourself.
I think it's such a cool progression. I love that it's in your scopes too, of being able to change up your content style once you're a homeowner, because it'll evolve and it'll be so different, but it's going to be so fun for you because you're going to be back to square one, learning new things, and people are going to be learning with you. That's really cool.
Yes, and there's even like some. And the funny thing is, like I've even experimented a little bit doing stuff that I would say goes beyond. So, well, I would say certainly goes beyond what normal renters would do. Like for example, we have like a butcher block kitchen island in the middle of our kitchen that was like original from the house. It's like 6 years old now, so obviously you can imagine how gross like a wood butcher block is that's 6 years old. We lived with it for like a year, and then at a certain point, I looked at it and I was like, it's honestly gross that sometimes I'm just like eating food or cutting stuff on top of this. And so like I bought like a rotary sander and like sanded it away the entire thing. And then I then proceeded to like, buy the wood safe, like butcher oil. Like those are stuff that like probably fits in the category of like things that homeowners would do and not someone who rents. But for me, it was not more of like a almost like a trial run. It's like, how do I actually enjoy doing these more like renovation DIY type things? And at the same time, obviously, like as a content creator, it can make for pretty good content too. But I certainly got comments in that video being like, "Aren't you renting? Like, why are you like, like why your landlord must love you? Like, why are you doing stuff for him?"
I don't think so. I think people are so conservative with what they can get away with as renters, and maybe people have had some Nazi landlords who won't let them change light switches. But man, like you can do some stuff, and if anything, you're improving the value. Your landlord should be patting you on the back and taking a couple $100 off of rent
I
the
fully
next
agree.
month
I,
for doing
honestly,
that.
I'm so curious. I haven't had like conversations with my landlord. Knows what I do for a living, and so like he's even mentioned before that he's like watches some of my videos sometimes. But I've never really like sat down with him and like actually asked him like, "Hey, what is your opinion on like what I've done with the place?"
I've intentionally not shared my Instagram or social media stuff with my landlords because I be doing stuff in here that I probably should be asking permission for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
But
I'm pretty lucky because I when I first applied to this place, actually, like it's a funny story because we were touring this place and there was another family, this couple with I think like one or two like very young kids that was also super interested in applying for it. But like I said, like I had such that strong emotional response when I first walked in here. I was like, okay, like I'll do whatever it takes to get this place over them. And so like for me, I actually purposely shared the fact that I'm a home decor creator with him because I thought that that would like influence. I think number one, it's like someone who does this for a living is probably going to care for the space a little bit better than someone who has like a child, right? The kid's gonna like fuck shit up and then like it's like a bigger
yeah,
liability having
that's
kids.
real.
And so I actually purposely shared what I did for a living because I think for me, like it established a certain level of connection with my landlord. He's someone who very clearly has a passion for design. Like he bought this place when it was like super run down from the original owner who built it in 1958. Put like a ton of effort into renovating it, and then like was originally going to move in with his wife, but then his wife's like parent got sick, so they're staying with her in France, taking care of her, like finishing the kids through high school. And so he basically had to rent it out more out of necessity because he had to accommodate this new situation. And so like for me, I saw like, here's a guy who clearly has like a life passion for design. Like, let me also share that not only do I have this passion, but I also do it for a living. And it ended up working in my favor. He ended up choosing us over the other young couple who, even though they probably had like more established careers or a more stable income source than like someone who's a content creator. But I think that really helped a lot. Yeah.
Know your landlord. Know the owner of the house. I think that is such good renter advice, and I haven't always been able to get to the main source if I'm talking to a real estate agent. They're not always they're just serving as the conduit, and I have tried to, especially with this last house that we were renting, I wanted to make sure that we were talking to the property owners, that they could actually get a taste for who we are. Thankfully, I actually had a Zoom interview, and they had an interview with a few other couples, one of them being like this big family. Morally, I felt in this gray area of like, we're this young couple and we like, it's us two and a dog in an 1,800 square foot mid-century house. Certainly this pregnant wife with their kids and like real ass lives deserve the place more. But I'm thinking the exact same thing. Like, that's more of a liability. We're on a hill too. What if that kid just stumbles off of the ledge? You don't want that. But being able to talk with the people who invested in this property, I think that's so valuable, and it's not something that I think a lot of renters are able to think of because it's so spontaneous and you're rarely presented with the opportunity to do that. But anybody out there listening trying to rent, then I think that is good ass advice.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think like I think in general people have like a certain idea of like what landlords can be like. It's like people who are like trying to weasel you out of as much money as possible, like give you like the shittiest living situation as possible without like giving you too much. But like yeah, I think like you said, like when the rare opportunity presents itself that there can be a good overlap between the landlord and the potential tenant, I think it makes the renting experience like 1,000% more enjoyable because you guys are on the same page from day one. You like understand the space more. They understand what you want to do with the space and like how well you care for it. And I think yeah, it's a great situation if anyone ends up in that situation.
Speed round. First thought, best thought.
Okay.
Let's do it. And it's not like a yes or no situation. So whatever comes to Eric's brain. Open shelving.
Love it.
Candles for men.
Also love it. Underrated.
This is going to be your next thing. Black walls.
I think hate it because it's like it's a little bit too okay. I can't say hate it because I actually my landlord has this massive like black fireplace mantle, which
I'm
like
so surprised you haven't taken the sandpaper to that.
I hated it for the longest time, but like eventually it got to a point where it's like, okay, A, I'm renting, so I can't do anything about it, but B, like it actually made me aware of this concept of like, oh, I can actually integrate stuff that's like black into my space. Because like as you see, like most of my stuff that I've ever bought in is always like beige and white. And so like maybe like some greens, some yellows here and there, but like I've always strayed away from black just because I see it as something that's like extremely polarizing and really difficult to pair with things. But I find myself appreciating it. I think the longer I live here, the more I appreciate it because like it's influenced me to get, like certain furniture that is black to match with that and like expand my own design palette. And so like, I think for me, it's like black walls, don't love it, but could inspire some people to do something. I don't know.
Give a middle finger to all those criticizers out there saying you're too beige.
Yeah.
TV above the fireplace.
Doesn't work in most examples, but I will quickly plug something that I found that I was considering doing before I decided that I didn't really want a TV in my living room. There's something called like I think a company called Mantle Mount, where basically like it's you mount it above the mantle fireplace, and then like you can pull it out and then down, so the TV is not at like absurdly tall height. So as a concept, don't love it, and I would much rather find somewhere else for my TV. But if you end up in a situation where that's literally the only place you can put your TV, there are definitely solutions for that.
Do you guys just have the TV in the bedroom?
So we have this little thing right here, which is called the LG Stand By Me. It's like a portable smart TV slash screen. It's only 27 inches big, so like I'd hardly call it a TV. But because it's on wheels and it also has a built-in battery source, I can wheel it wherever I want to. So that's the TV that I use here. And then me and my girlfriend also converted our guest bedroom into kind of like a half movie theater, half guest bedroom type of thing. So we have a projector set up with like a pull-down screen there as well.
Televisions are the bane of my aesthetic existence. I think they're just
Tough.
so
Yeah,
unsightly.
TVs are really tough to pull off. Yeah.
I love the Samsung frame. That I think that's an elegant solution to having something, but
Yep.
it takes up so much space and it's so utilitarian. It's tough.
Yeah, totally agree.
I love the idea of just having a separate room. Are you guys using that in the same way that you would if it were just out in the open?
I think so the reason why I even did that in the first place was because I realized that like I had this guest bedroom, but like didn't really have guests over that much. Like I would maybe have someone stay with me like once every like 3 or 4 months. And so for me, it was more so just a practice of, I guess I also share our place is only 1,400 square feet. And I think people often think it's a lot bigger than it actually is because like we have this extremely open plan living space when it comes to our living room. But from a square footage perspective, our place is actually pretty small and compact. And so for me, it was more so, how do I get the most value out of the space that I'm renting and paying for? And so like, if I'm not having guests over, I might as well convert the guest bedroom into like a movie room that we actually use. And like, we use that all the time now. Like we love watching movies in there. Like when we're eating or when we're casually watching stuff with friends, sometimes I'll use the portable TV in the living room. But for the most part, like whenever we're watching movies or watching like binging TV shows, we'll always use the movie room.
Yeah, that's inspiring because what I'm really challenged by is things being out of sight, out of mind. Not that I need to force myself to watch. Well, actually, I'm the kind of guy who I would just not have a television, and Erica watches a reality TV show like once a week. Otherwise, we would just toss out the TV because we're both not TV people. But I am psychotic and will work 24/7 if I don't have a way to unplug, and the TV, it kind of serves like a nice purpose. I'd be afraid if I put it in the guest room. We have 3 bedrooms too, but one's my office, one's her office, one's our master bedroom. I love the idea of that, but I just think I'd be walking by it every single day and just forget that it even exists.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I guess like I'll admit that me and my girlfriend we're pretty Gen Z to the core. Like I probably watch a little more TV than I should. I probably watch a little too many movies than I should, and it's like I originally got rid of the TV in my living room for that purpose. Before we set up the movie room, it was just no TV anywhere, and then I realized that like wait, I actually like why am I lying to my like I love the idea that people push of like no TV in the living room because it forces people to be more communal, to be less focused on the electronics, to actually like make some sort of connection. But at the same time, it's like I'd be lying to myself if I didn't say that like I genuinely enjoy watching media. And so after that movie room thing, I think we watching more TV, and I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing.
No, I think that is such good advice. You brought that up earlier with living in your space and seeing how you interact with it. What does your
Yeah,
lifestyle do to
exactly.
dictate where you're putting your furniture?
Yeah.
Because we were all born into a generation that, for, well, multiple generations, there were just furniture in particular rooms that exist. And we never questioned it. The TV is in the living room, and
Yep.
that's where the family all gets together.
Yep.
And that's totally cool. There's no value judgment. If like that is your favorite thing to do to watch TV, by all means, bliss out and have it front and center. It should be. And I have in our new space, because we have a ton of real estate to be moving around things, it's things something I'm really cautious of making sure that I'm placing things as intentionally as possible. It's cool if somebody in your boat who watches, or if they don't want to be watching as much television, not a bad idea to reconsider the position. It doesn't need to be in the living room just because that's what culture tells us.
Exactly.
I'm dealing with this thing right now where like I aspirationally want to be into vinyl record player. Like I
Okay.
want that analog life.
Yep.
We got a record player though, and it's by the TV, and it's not calling my name, and I'm really struggling. We've got like every weekend now we're going out and getting some cheap ass vinyl to play, but I never find myself playing it. We'll be playing like a board game, and I forget that we even have a record player. It'd be nice, and meanwhile I'm just telling Alexa to play Spotify half the time.
Yeah. Do you regret making that vinyl purchase then?
No,
Or actually,
because
maybe I'll ask you, why did you feel the need to purchase it in the first place?
I'm the kind of guy who like will see my future self and be like, ooh, he's cool. I want to be him.
I
Let me
see.
figure out how to be him. I want to be a cool vinyl dad one day who is just,
Hmm.
maybe I've got like an iPod shuffle, and that's the extent of the digital music that I listen to. And I'm just listening to like good old analog tracks constantly with a massive collection because I have nothing better to do with my time.
Yep. That's a good point. I think that is a really delicate balance. I think that a lot, this actually really ties into maybe what you were talking about before about like how do we gauge whether people are being true to themselves versus, trying to be someone who they're not. I felt that pressure a lot when it comes to coffee. So I don't drink coffee at all. Actually, like I'm somebody who like I'll come clean. Like I drink matcha every once in a while because the caffeine's lower. But like I'm someone like if I drink caffeine, like I start tweaking out completely. Like as you're probably aware, like coffee and home decor for some reason in the social media space are like extremely tied together. Like
Yeah, PB&J.
exactly. Like I'll see people who are, super there's even an entire side of the internet it's basically it's like dedicated to like coffee setups, right? Like you'll see people spending like four or five thousand dollars on like this like commercial grade coffee machine for their own space. And I think to a large degree of it, it really exemplifies sort of just this idea of like hopping on a trend for the sake of hopping on the trend. It's like I myself considered getting an expensive espresso machine, and in my head, I for a second justified it. It's like, oh my parents when they come over love drinking coffee, or my girlfriend sometimes drinks coffee. But then like I just thought about it more, and it's like if I'm not a coffee person, like why am I trying to convince myself to like buy a coffee setup? And so I think like in some ways seeing things online can inspire you to become someone that you maybe want to be. But at the same time, it's like, for your example, like the vinyl record player, for example, like you bought that vinyl record player. If you're not going to use it for like 2 years, then maybe at some point you realize, okay, maybe I'm not going to be a vinyl person after all. And I think that's totally fine. I think that's especially why like I like to encourage people to buy things secondhand. Like it's totally fine to try doing these things, but like try not to do it at a level where like the personal investment is so heavy up front that later on, if you realize you don't actually like it, that you're not like biting yourself in the back, like hitting yourself in the back of the head for like, oh my God, why did I spend so much money on something that like I didn't
Yeah.
end up integrating into my life?
Calling bullshit on the second hand though, because I bought this on Facebook Marketplace, and half of the reason that I am so hesitant to even use this thing is it's not good. It's like kind of it probably
Mm,
needs to be programmed, and I know nothing about vinyl,
I
so
see.
it requires calibration. So half of the resistance is the limitations of the device and me not knowing what the hell to do. I
Mm,
should probably call somebody who knows what they're doing. But good old Facebook Marketplace, no harm, no loss. I worship the man who might one day be into vinyl though. So I'm trying to integrate this into my life where it's, if anything, a little bit more effortless for me to get into it in the way that it's probably a good idea to meditate. And I've never really been able to connect with that too, but there's probably ways that I could modify my behavior to lead me towards being the kind of person who meditates.
yeah. It's always a push and pull. I feel like the idea of like acceptance over your own habits and what you do and not being ashamed of them versus like, you know, like trying to pick up new habits, especially in the new year. It's like just trying to pick up new habits that like, oh, like maybe this year I want to be this type of person. I don't really have the answer to like what the right balance of that is. I think like, you know, like part of the reason why I love the internet is because in some ways it exposes me to things that I hadn't thought about before. And like I can continue to go down these rabbit holes, like, and then find new passions. Like there are certain things that like initially I stumbled upon them as just like you were saying, just like a pretty like vain, like, oh, I want to maybe get into this because like a lot of people say it's cool and I want to be that type of person. And some of those things have stuck with me, and some of those things have like, you know, I just accepted, you know, I'm actually not that type of person, so like I'm not going to bother with that. It's always a delicate balance. I think like I think again like time is really like the thing that will really tell people like what they end up enjoying. Like if you have something and you really don't use it after a certain period of time, like maybe that tells you that like regardless of how hard you want to try to be that person, like it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, you're not going to get a coffee pot tattooed on your forehead
Certainly
anytime
not.
soon.
Yes.
What does your house look like when you're 40 years old?
I want to say it looks the same. I think like people like I don't really think that age is a good indicator of what your style should be. You know, like I think by any means, like if you would take the Legos and like the Miffy and like all these playful things out of my house, I don't think you would show this house to anybody and assume that like a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old live here, right? Like I think like it fits like a much older aesthetic. You would think that like, oh, these people must be at least like 30 or 40 years old to have like the types of style that they have. So I like to think that hopefully it looks the exact same because I think like at this point in my life, I already feel like I'm being true to myself and the things that I enjoy doing. And I hope that when I turn 40, I'm still, you know, the same type of person who's true to themselves and what they enjoy. And so like maybe I'll pick up a few more hobbies along the way. I don't know. Maybe I'll develop like I'll undevelop my caffeine issue and I'll actually will start enjoying coffee. And so then maybe I'll integrate more coffee stuff. But yeah, I like to say that I hope it doesn't change much, honestly,
It's an added 300 square feet for the coffee nook.
just with the coffee.
Eric Wang, thank you very much for chatting with you. It's been so nice to finally connect with you, brother.
Of course, man. Really appreciate it. And it's funny because I think like I see my creator journey as like very singular and like I haven't, you know, like the first collaboration I ever did was it was like a huge one. I did a collab with like Pokemon on designing her streaming room. Um, but as a whole, like I feel like I've just trying to do my own thing. And I at some points I thought it was a good thing. It's like don't let other people kind of influence and like I see a lot of people that collaborate with other people and then in that process almost like lose the part of themselves that they thought was cool. Like people either like join a content group or they'll, you know, start collaborating with a certain person and then it's like, oh, I feel like you're switching up a little bit. But I think recently I've realized that like I've tried to open myself to more opportunities to collaborating with people like yourself, like other people that, you know, like haven't thought about connecting before just because I think the longer I'm in this space, the more I realize that like connection and being able to find people who have similar passions or, you know, being able to widen your perspective is really valuable. And so I think what you're doing with this is such an amazing thing. And I hope you continue to, you know, find more people that you connect with on a home decor basis. You know, I know you do a lot of fitness content too. I hope you find some people that like, you know, integrate a little more to your fitness stuff. Because I think that the conversations that we have, I think are really more valuable in a lot of ways than I think that just like the videos that we make.
Contain multitudes, us metrosexual men.
We do.